Newroz celebrations. That's the answer to your Kurds-questions. A column by Fréderike Geerdink. In a shocking move, the government decided to illegally rob Ekrem İmamoğlu, the elected mayor of Istanbul, of his university degree and then jailed him on charges of corruption and terrorism. It's outright absurd. It may push Turkey towards full autocracy, or it may be the move with which Erdogan finally overplayed his hand. Interestingly, many commentators are asking questions about the position of the Kurds. Will they join the mass protests that have erupted in many cities in Turkey? My counter question is, don't you see the Newroz celebrations? The latest news is that İmamoğlu is now officially arrested after giving his testimony to the prosecutor on Saturday. There are unfounded corruption charges against him. The terrorism charges are based on the way İmamoğlu and other CHP candidates in the local elections last year built alliances with the HDP, Dem party's predecessor, to secure a victory over AKP candidates. The strategy was very successful in several key cities, and now this is used against İmamoğlu as well. It's been used against other CHP mayors before, for example last year in Esenyurt, when CHP mayor Ahmet Özer was replaced by an AKP stooge. Of course, the vote of the Kurds has been disrespected like this much more often, and also after previous local elections. So much even that hardly any elected Kurdish mayor was still in their seat when last year's local elections commenced. It was the goal of the Kurdish movement to reclaim their seats, and they did. It's interesting to see the usual pundits on Turkey start asking what I coin here the K questions. What will the Kurds do? Why is it that the Kurds have been rather silent so far? Which side will the Kurds be on? The presumption behind the K questions is that if only the Kurds would massively support the protesters against the anti-democratic treatment of İmamoğlu, finally Erdogan's empire would fall. The funny thing is, the K questions are asked while all over Kurdistan in Turkey Newroz celebrations are going on. What do they think Newroz celebrations are? Shallow dancing and lighting fires to welcome the new year? Of course not. They are highly political gatherings based on Kurdish mythology. The mythology is about Kawa the blacksmith, who lived in Mesopotamia, where the people were ruled by the cruel king Dehak, after having lived in freedom and prosperity for centuries. Dehak's cook was actually the devil, which Dehak didn't know. The cook asked to kiss the king's shoulder, and when he did, black snakes emerged from the shoulders. The snakes had to be fed with the brains of the children from the people. From then on, the people lived in darkness, literally. The sun didn't rise again. Crops didn't grow anymore, birds flew elsewhere, and one child after another was sacrificed to the king. Until Kawa decided to not obey the demand to sacrifice his last child, a daughter. Instead of his daughter's brain, he gave those of a sheep. All other people followed his example. Soon hundreds of children were saved. They went to live in the Zagros mountains, where Kawa taught the young men and women to fight. Then one day they came down from the mountains and headed to Dehak's castle. Villagers joined them. Kawa, standing on a high peak, gave a signal with his smith's hammer, and thousands of fighters and villagers crushed the castle and beat the guards. Kawa stormed to the king's rooms. He killed the king with his hammer and chopped his head off, after which the snakes died. He then climbed a mountain and lit a fire to let the people of Mesopotamia know that they were free again. Soon, fires burned everywhere and the good news spread. The next morning, the sun rose again. Flowers bloomed, birds returned and sang. The people laughed and danced around the fires. This is the mythology that drives the Kurdish movement. This is why Newroz celebrations are so important. And this year, they not just coincide with the Kurdish movement's demand to the government to start solving the Kurdish issue via a democratic process instead of with violence, so the PKK can disarm and dissolve itself as Öcalan has requested, but also, incidentally, with İmamoğlu's arrest. The whole week now, During celebrations, the speakers have referred to the illegal measures against Istanbul's elected mayor. So the question is not what the Kurds will do. They've persistently been doing it for decades. The question is not why the Kurds have been rather silent so far. They haven't been silent at all. The question is not on which side the Kurds are. They are clearly on the side of democracy. In all their actions, Kurds have been following the third path. That path is not about serving the needs of any side of the Turkish political spectrum, which are all rooted in their oppression, but focusing on a future in which Turkish fascism is eradicated and everybody can live as equals with full political and cultural rights. For the third path, both the Islamofascism of AKP and MHP and the Kemalist fascism of CHP have to go. If factions within those blocs are willing to work with the Kurdish movement, the Kurds will take that opportunity. But if not, they struggle in their own with the people. There are factions within the CHP who showed solidarity with Kurdish mayors being replaced. The CHP leadership, still consisting of only men by the way, has spoken out on behalf of replaced mayors in Van and Mardin and have visited them in support. But are they willing to join Kawa's masses? Can they redirect their course and follow the third path straight to the castle so eventually the sun can rise again? Happy Newroz, everybody. Fréderike Geerdink is an independent journalist. Follow her on Blue Sky or Twitter, X, or subscribe to her weekly newsletter, Expert Kurdistan. The links are all in her social media bios.